So we'll just make a start to tonight's meeting. So I'd just like to welcome you all. So just an introduction to our team tonight. So we've got myself, who I'm Rebecca McBain. As you maybe heard, I'm a consultant working out of the Theanston office, and I've also got help from Kirsten, who will be monitoring questions, and then there's Malcolm McDonald in the background, who is producer for tonight's meeting. Our speaker tonight is Dave Green. So Dave, I'm sure you'll go into more detail, but Dave is CEO of Duncan Farms, which is a farming enterprise based near Turriff in the northeast of Scotland. And Dave's also involved in the Aberdeen Endowment Trust, which is a Scottish charity involved in grant funding from its land and buildings in the northeast of Scotland. So the meeting tonight will last roughly an hour, so we'll finish about 9 p.m. And we'll just start off, like I'm just doing my introductory bit at the minute, then we'll pass over to Dave, and then we'll, at the end, we'll come into a chance to ask some questions and that. So tonight we're going to be covering seasonal lets and tenancies. Also, if everybody tonight is muted, so apologies if you already know how these webinars work, but so to ask a question, please use the chat or the questions function on your wee toolbar on the right hand side there, and that'll allow you to ask a question, and Kirsten will just monitor the questions and put them to Dave. So to start off tonight, just for a wee icebreaker, I think we'll just have a wee poll question. So it's just to sort of get the land status of all the attendees. So some of you might have problems with the questions function, but if you can just minimize your screen and then maximize again, that should allow you to vote. So if we could just launch the poll now. Just give it a wee minute for everybody to have a wee vote. So I think that's everybody. If we can maybe just share the results. So yeah, so that's showing that the greatest is in the other category, followed by landowners, and seasonal lets and tenancies are the same. So yeah, so next. So now I'll just pass on to Dave, and he'll swap to his screen to do his presentation.
Okay, I see a green box around me, so I'm taking it that means that you can hear what I'm saying, hopefully. Yeah, so good evening, everyone. Strange kind of situation for me. I've never done a webinar before, so yeah, I guess it's just a ask for a wee bit of patience, and hopefully the technology will work. So tonight it's very much, I was going to say it's very much my view. Obviously I'm part of various organisations, but you know, it's certainly my view on things, and not the organisation I'm part of. So as Rebecca says, I'm involved in a number of organisations, one of which is Aberdeen Endowments Trust. I'm a trustee on the one of the trustees on the trust, and with a number of properties in Aberdeenshire, 4 estates that are predominantly 91 Act tenancies, but that is changing, and I'll get on to the type of tenancies and that later on. So I've been involved in both sides of the fence, both landlord and tenant, over the years. As Rebecca said, I'm CEO of Duncan Farms. I've been with Fred Duncan for 25 years, and there's been lots of roller coasters along the way between wind farm leases and property leases, commercial property leases, 91 Act tenancies, contract farming arrangements. So certainly got a lot of experience, but that doesn't mean to say I've necessarily got the knowledge, but I've certainly got a lot of experience. But tonight's webinar is very much to focus on starting with a seasonal let or tenancy and what steps I think you need to take to get one, or what would help. So I'll just see if this works now. Yeah. Okay, so just a quick slide here that shows the map of Scotland with the tenancies that are, where the bulk of the tenancies are. As it says in the right there, only 25% of Scottish agricultural land is tenanted. This area has dropped slowly. As you can see, the bulk of the tenanted land is probably in the upland areas. But in the last 5 years, we're seeing that the amount of tenanted land has dropped by 3%, which is not a significant drop. But the interesting part of that is that the number of short-term leases have doubled. So I guess that just shows you, how things are changing. More landlords are looking for short-term agreements. I guess it's, for a bit more flexibility and what their future planning is. So I think there's a lot of it is based on government, the way the government's pointing or their direction of travel. It's more for tenants' rights, and there's a concern about land reform, etc. And I think that probably from a landlord's perspective, there's maybe shouldn't say it, as I say, it's my view, is there's a wee bit of distrust of the government and where things are going, which is obviously not good for the tenanted sector. And also, it strengthens the more short-term arrangements, strengthen the landlord's balance sheet. So that kind of is a tick in the box for the finance side as well. So where do you start? Where do I start? So the gist about any of these things is you need to convince someone to give you a chance. So I'm saying we need a combination of the things listed there, the 5 things. So knowledge, experience, funds, commitment, and enthusiasm. Knowledge without experience is not enough. Experience without knowledge might be enough, but in my view, you definitely need cash, commitment, and enthusiasm because it's hard work. But a combination of those is what you need. For a new start, wanting to keep stock or keep livestock with minimal capital, possibly a seasonal let is a good place to start because you can build things from there. Whereas taking on a tenancy with no stock and no equipment, you need a lot of capital, and then you need a landlord to believe that you're going to be able to deliver or be able to succeed. But there's not a fixed way of doing things, but certainly there's a lot of people would have started, in the stock side with just renting grass seasonally and building from there. But to find an opportunity, it's important to have contacts. You need people. You need to know people in the industry or know people that maybe are aware of what's out there, what's available, and put in a good word for you. The farming community is a very small community in numbers wise, and everybody knows everybody. Certainly where we are, everybody does. So in knowing people, it certainly helps. You can get to know people through if you're young farmers, go into auctions, MFU courses, NFU meetings, farmers meetings, to try and get yourself known in the industry, try and get yourself a reputation. Reputation is important, again, because you're trying to impress somebody to give you a chance. So you need to persuade someone to give you a chance. So you need to be trustworthy, or need to try and get a reputation for being trustworthy and making a good job. And if you're still an employee and you're looking to get your own business or tenancy at some point, turn up on time. Just very much the basics, really. So that's my view of where to start as far as that's concerned. So just briefly on the tenancies themselves, what type of tenancies are there? Obviously, there's seasonal lets, which we'll come on to, but as far as a lease that's sort of pre-1993 is called a 1991. Most of them are called a 1991 up tenancy. These are for the life of the tenant, for the lifetime of the tenant, and can be passed on to family. And now I think the rules are kind of slackening off with these. That can be assigned to a third party. Very much they are what you say, locked into the one that gives the tenant most power or most authority, and they're able to have they've got most rights really with that type of tenancy. More modern tenancies, the most common types now are the three listed below, which are the short limited duration tenancies, limited duration tenancies, the modern limited duration tenancies. So, with the short term, and if there's no change after the 5 years, then it follows on. It becomes a limited duration tenancy after that. And the rights of these leases are mainly that there is a agreed written lease, with lots of detail of what both parties have to conform to. And at the end of the lease, the tenant is entitled to be compensated for any capital improvements they've made. So there's a bit of protection there. And in some circumstances, the lease can be passed on to family. So just looking at seasonal lets, comparing seasonal lets, or just a brief sort of summary of seasonal lets and tenancies, just the difference between the two. Seasonal lets, very common, summer grazing of stock and cropping, so vegetable lets. Although for cropping, contract farming and stubble to stubble are probably more common. I would say the bulk of the seasonal lets, certainly that I'm aware of, are connected with grazing. They're definitely less than a year, usually 6 to 9 months. If it's greater than a year, then it goes on to the other type of tenancy, the short limited duration tenancy. But I would say in general, seasonal lets and contract farming arrangements might suit landowners more from a tax point of view as well. So, depending on where landowners are with that position, they might go slightly different with a cropping let as opposed to a grazing let. And to the right of the screen, there's obviously the bit about the tenancy side of things. So it's a much more intensive process with a lot more effort and documentation to work through. As I say, they're for more than a year. They're often buildings included. There's normally a tender process. You need to formulate a business plan, cash flow, profit and loss, etc. And then there'll be legal agreements involved as well. And certainly, as I say, it's a lot more rigorous process. And it's kind of theme I've got through tonight's presentation as well as you potentially need professional support and help, or certainly the help of peers to complete that if you're not familiar with that. But because it's very important that you're prepared, your preparation for these things. So that's briefly the difference between them. So where do I find these tenancies? Where do I look? Well, as I said earlier, you need to be connected. Make sure people are aware that that's what you're looking for. Phone calls, emails, whoever you think might help. That could be land agents, agronomists, auctioneers. Just try and get it known that you're in the market. You're looking for an opportunity. So email to individuals. Might be people that that maybe know estate managers, factors, trustees. Just people need to know that that's what you're looking for, and then keep your eye on the press. And just try and find where they are. Word of mouth as well. But again, as I say, young farmers, attending young farmers, you find out what's going on in the local area. So it's just very much try and keep your ear to the ground. And again, through all of this process, you're trying to develop a reputation for yourself to be, somebody that would be worthy of a let or a tenancy. So seasonal lets, to me, it's all about preparation, and whether it's a let or a tenancy, so it's all about being prepared, So it's really, as I say, making sure you're prepared. So a wee bit here, before you visit the farm, first try and establish what the history of the farm is and the history of the letting has been. Try and get a picture of, so that you can come in with the right approach as far as looking to get a seasonal let. Understand the conditions of the let, timings when you need to, on and off of the field. What is the capacity of the land, fences, water, soil tests, cropping history, fertility levels, because you need all this information to try and find out, what the likely productivity and output is likely to be. You need to find out from the landlord what's the parameters, are there restrictions in timing and when we're able to do things. Is there water courses close by? I'll have to keep an eye out for. So it's really, as I say, very much do your homework. Take some advice from others. Try and establish where the rental market is. Again, as I say, talking to others, because you want to be competitive. To be able to do your budget, you need to find out where the market is, so that you can establish where you need to be competitive, and then do your costings and decide what you can afford to pay. So these type of things you need to work through and try and establish, what you can afford to pay. So if you've done your preparations, you've done a kind of draft costing of where you need to be, then the next stage is to go and visit the farm. So in any business, relationships are important. You're going to meet the farmer or meet the landowner, or maybe an agent. So it's very much trying to develop relationships. So as I say, try and strike up a rapport. You need to be trying to get across that you have knowledge and experience and enthusiasm, and you're going to make a good job and be a good tenant. You need to, confirm with the landlord the conditions of the let. What's all involved. Does the landlord have any particular things that are not necessarily in the terms that he would prefer you to do, so that at least you're going to present something that you feel you've got a fair chance of success. Have your list of questions with you. Be prepared. So that the landlord farmer can see that you're serious about it and you've thought everything through, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody that's professional in their approach, and that they're going to, whatever as far as the tenant's concerned, what the tenant's going to say to you is what they're going to deliver. As I say, have your list of questions. So are there any restrictions? As I say, narrow roads, poor access, bridges. Keep your eyes open for where you're going. Is there anything that might restrict what you want to do or what you want to achieve on the farm or the land where you're going. Oh, let's go off the screen. Just a second. It's not any dodgy pictures yet, so we're okay. So, as I say, the landlord probably won't ask for cash flows for a seasonal let, but he or she will have to be confident that you can deliver. You've got the money, and you've got the means of doing it, of paying for the lease, and that they need to be sure that the land will be looked after and passed on to the next tenant in good condition. Commonly, seasonal grazing lets are through auction. However, many seasonal lets go from year to year. So it's one of those things, if you've striked up a good relationship with somebody and you do what you say you're going to do, honour your deals, etc., then hopefully in a good position to get back again the following year. So it's just about building up those relationships. And if somebody, if they've got other questions, they've asked you a question that you can't necessarily answer, get back to them quickly. Then they can see that you're serious about it and that you're really wanting to make this thing work. So moving on to the full tenancy, a bit more detail on that. That's as I say there, it's not so straightforward. There's a lot more professional input, you would say, in that. I guess it's, if you look at both parties are making a long-term commitment. So it needs certainty on both sides that they're doing the right thing and they've made the right decision. So it just needs a lot more due diligence work done, etc., to be sure that we've looked at every angle to be sure we're doing the right thing. So the agreement will be longer than a year as well. So the landlord is looking for more protection, just as far as the tenancy situation, to be sure that they're not exposing themselves to any risk. So again, you need to be aware of the landlord's objectives, what the landlord would like to see. if you were interviewed by Aberdeen Endowments Trust, for example, do some research on the trust. What are the objectives of the trust? What are the trust trying to do? So that if you're asked questions about the trust when it comes to interview, then if you know the answers, then that's a wee flag to say that you've done your homework, you're thorough at what you do. So if you're thorough in your preparation, you'll be thorough with the farm as well if you were to be successful. Sustainability is always important, so you want to be presenting something that's sustainable. So the tender documents you get, you get field records, lineman records, building dimensions. You want to get as much as you can, to get as much information as you can, water supplies, etc. We need all the information we can get so that we can go and make a plan. So when we come up with our farm plan, oh, I'm going too far with that one, hold on, sorry. In most cases, in my view, the landlord would like a diversified income stream with a few enterprises, keeping up or improving the fertility of the farm and of the soil. To me, a diversified income reduces the risk for the business. That diversified income could easily be income coming in from outside, as in a job or whatever. It's not a complete no, but ideally you'd want all the income to come from the farm. But I know you sometimes get somebody's applying for a tenancy that already has the own a farm already, so that for that side of it, that lessens the risk. But if you're a new start, you maybe don't have that income from another farm, but you've got to show how you're going to be able to deal with a cash flow situation. So as I say, if you're not if you can't diversify on the farm, what's the plan in a bad year? You should enterprises that most suit the farm. Obviously whatever farm you're looking at, you've got to try and do enterprises that suit the topography of the farm and the what you're able to do with the farm. But I do think you really want to be doing doing enterprises, carrying out enterprises that you're interested in, because to me, if you're interested in it, you'll make a better job of it. So you've really got to try and follow the interest, because you're working hard, long hours. It needs to be something that really you want to improve on and get better. So try and risk assess your plan, because you'll be challenged about that plan at interview. So you'll be dealing, when you get interviewed, if you get interviewed, you'll be dealing with people that know what they're talking about, and they'll challenge you on, is that the right bull? Is it the right crop rotation? Is it the right market? Why are you selling to that market? So that you need to be trying to double think most of these things to see, what am I going to be asked at this? I need to be risk analysing the plan to see that I can answer the questions I'm likely to be asked. I mean, obviously, for the business point of view, that's what you would be doing anyway, but you need to be prepared for that. Do a draft profit and loss with assumptions listed, sale prices, yields, performance. It's important that you have the assumptions as well, because that helps whoever's looking at it to kind of see, do I agree with those assumptions? Do I think they're realistic? Or oh no, well, this is ridiculous what they've written here. Obviously, that they don't know, so it's a flag again for if do you know what you're talking about. And I say again, seek advice. Seek advice from others. Undoubtedly, it's a difficult, difficult process. So there may be other professional help out there to help you, or maybe others, friends that have been through it. As I say, seek help from others. Okay, so next we are the farm visit. So as I say, similar to the seasonal let one, first impression is important. Strike up a rapport, your chance to impress. It could be the owner or the agent, but whoever it is, it's there, will be reporting back and will have an influence on the outcome. Be smart, be tidy, be presented. It could still be in a boiler suit, but make sure it's a clean one. Whatever you're comfortable with, but try and present yourself that you're an organised person. You're presenting yourself in the proper way, that I'm tidy, the farm will be tidy. That's how I'm going to operate as a farmer on your farm. As I say, never get a second chance at a first impression. I'm sure you haven't heard that one before. So try to get across your knowledge and experience, and what you're all about. Have a list of questions in a notepad. Assess the condition of the farm, as this will influence the performance of of your figures that you're working through. So you need to be trying to understand that and try and assess what you do. Assess what type of tenant the landlord is looking for, if you can. Is it young? Oh, I've moved on here actually, sorry. Oops, my mistake. I moved on. I'm talking about the next page. But anyway, so where was I? Yeah, all right, so assess what type of tenant the landlord is looking for. At least so that you can maybe align yourself with what they're looking for. Is it a new entrant they're looking for? Is it somebody that is preferring arable or stock, or what is it? What type of tenant is it the landlord is looking for? And also at the farm visit, if you can assess the condition of the buildings and equipment, so that it can help sort of fine tune what you have in as far as your farm plan. And also maybe tease out with the landlord, are they prepared to invest money? If you are wanting another enterprise but the farm needed more investment, is that something they are prepared to do? So the documentation you put in is fairly self-explanatory there. As far as tender documents, you'll need to put in your CV and all the relevant experience that you've got to the tenancy you've applied for. Have a 3 to 5 year business plan, depending on how long the tenancy you're applying for is. Obviously, I think a minimum 3 years, but if it's a 5-year SLDT you're applying for, then in detail and year by year what the proposed development, the stages through the development that you're looking at. Perhaps a testimonial for others, but that's probably asked for later, and the name of some referees that are going to vouch for you. And on the financial side, I would totally agree that we need an enterprise gross margin, so that whoever's going through the figures can see how you built up the income. So that we can sense check all the numbers to be sure that we're happy that it's been put together properly and it stacks up. A 3 to 5 year cash flow and assumptions, and also how is the tenancy going to be financed? Who's the backer? Because obviously to set up for a start there's a considerable cost. So where's the money coming from for that? So the interview itself, again, similar to in some ways to the seasonal let one. You'll be asked to if you get to the interview, you're probably down to the last 2 or 3. You'll be interviewed by probably at least 2 people, but mainly you'll be asked to go through what you've submitted in the tender documents. Mainly to show that you know what you're speaking about. You go through your CV, through your plan. They just want to hear you talking about yourself, about your plan, to kind of see that let's hear it from you, and you'll kind of demonstrate your experience and your knowledge through that. And you need to show at this interview that you've assessed the plan for risks that threaten it and address them. Go into detail, breeds you're using, crops, rotations, markets. Just need to show them that you know what you're talking about. And you do need a good knowledge of the financials as well. I've seen before that people maybe get somebody to help them with the financials and they don't maybe totally get how they're all kind of pulled together, so they're submitted along with the tender documents, but when they're quizzed on them, they're kind of not sure. So try and get as much of a handle on the figures as well, how they're put together, so that you can convince the panel that you've totally thought everything through. You may be asked about your long-term goals as well, so be ready with an answer with that as well. So what is the landlord trying to assess? Really, does the landlord believe this plan is achievable? Do you have the capability, the experience? does this fulfil the landlord's objectives? You know, all of these things are trying to work out. You have the finance and the grasp of the importance of delivering what you say you're going to. You know, as I say, it's very much your opportunity to demonstrate you know what you're at. So that's really what they're trying to assess. Will your plan, I mean, the other thing I guess they're trying to think about is, will your plan improve the farm? Will it improve the fertility? Do we believe you're going to maintain it the way it is or improve it? Rent is important, you know, rent's got to be competitive, you know, but to me, if I was taking it down to the last three or four, I wouldn't necessarily have discounted number 4 just because he's 4th in the list as far as rent's concerned. There's a lot of important things. I mean, I wouldn't have picked the one with the smallest rent, but you know, it's not always top of the priority list, depending on what the landlord's looking for. You know, you've obviously got to be competitive, but you know, you need to put in realistic figures. The other thing I've got there as far as the interview assessment, you know, what's the personal circumstances of the prospective tenant? You know, you know, where are they going to get their support from? They've got a lot on their plate. They'll need support. Is it from family? Do they have a partner? You know, what's their personal circumstances like? Because there's going to be a lot of pressure here again, and as I've got there, risks, stresses. That's one that is a risk. You know, because they're going to be under a lot of pressure. So you need to be teasing out a wee bit of that as well, just to see that that's stable as well. And again, you know, you may be applying for a 5-year short limited duration tenancy, but it may end up being a 15, 20-year agreement. So, you know, you'll be assessed on whether we think, or the landlord thinks that you're one that's going to be there a long time, or whether you're just, it's a stepping stone to something else, which may not suit the landlord, you know. So I think I'm just about there. So finishing off really, I've got what I'm saying is tenancy tips. So as it says there, be thorough, do your homework and prepare. You know, make sure you impress when you go in your farm visit. Set realistic budget targets. You know, as I say, because these numbers will be sense checked by whoever, they'll know what to expect as far as the numbers are concerned. And there's no point in just making the numbers look better just so that you can show that you can pay a higher rent or whatever, because you know, you'll get found out. Be genuine and confident and enthusiastic. You know, I think there's a lot of landlords that want to give people a chance, but you know, you've got to be credible with what you're putting over, and show a bit of enthusiasm for the farm, but for the industry as well, that you want to grow in the industry. Take advice from others. You know, there's a lot of people out there that are happy to share their thoughts and their advice, and you know, we'll need others to point us in the right direction. Assess the risks and build in contingencies as well. And as I say, it's not always the highest rent that gets the deal. So you need to put in as much as you can, but it needs to work for you as well in all your circumstances. So I think that's me. Now I think I stop sharing my screen. I think that's what I do next. So to say thank you very much for your attention, and I think there may be some questions. Oh, I think it's been taken away from me. Is it? No. There you go. Right, I think that's it. Does that work?
Thanks, Dave, for an excellent presentation tonight. You've provided some great advice and a valuable insight to seasonal lets and tenancies, and you provided some key business tips for getting started and really help sell ourselves. So I think we'll just take some questions from the audience, which we'll put to Dave, if that's okay. I'll pass to Kirsten who's been monitoring some questions from the audience.
Thanks, Rebecca. I am about to give you a grilling, Dave. There has been loads of questions coming in. And anybody who wants to ask any more questions, if you hit the orange kind of arrow on the right hand side of your screen, you'll see there's a question panel, and if you just put any questions onto there, then hopefully we'll have enough time to get all our questions to Dave. So where do I start? I'll start nice, I think. So you said, I thought it was actually quite a nice part where you said plan for a bad year, because that's a brilliant bit of advice, because there's always a bad year. But somebody's asking, how would you advise people to do a 3-year cash flow looking forward when we've got Brexit in front of us?
I would say, well, if it was me, it was doing it, I would be optimistic. You know, as far as making changes, I mean, it was predicted a year ago that the sheep industry, you know, we're going to have to start culling sheep. They were all going to have to be slaughtered and put in a hole in the ground, but we're now looking at sheep prices as strong as they've ever been at this time of year. Okay, Brexit's not come yet, but I totally believe there's a market. It will find its market. You know, it'll still find its market if our sheep don't go to Italy or wherever they go. There'll be a market somewhere else where there's an opportunity. So I think you kind of look at your own business and say, well, I just need to be as good as I can in my own business and be as productive and efficient and get my costs right, get my productivity right, and I'll be there, you know, when others are not. So it's just focusing on your own business to get it right. You know, and there is uncertainty out there, but you know, with uncertainty there comes opportunities as well.
And would you factor in some, would you like to see factored in some sensitivity in the cash flows?
I think as long as it's shown there, you know, detail what you've done as far as the cash flow is concerned. I mean, you know, it would be good to see some sensitivity, but I think if you put in the actual yields, that's kind of or the production. To me, that's the, if you put in just the actual figures, but as long as you've shown your assumptions, you don't necessarily need to show a sensitivity as well, because whoever's looking at it can maybe make that call.
Okay, now we've got they're coming in thick and fast. Given your experience of agriculture, what would be your one piece of advice for new entrants?
One piece of advice. Oh, dear boy. Well, think about that for a second. I think, you know, seek help from others. You know, I think there's a lot of people out there that are wanting to support new business. And I think it's very much I'm not even talking about advice that you pay for, but if you get into organizations, people want to see you succeed. So you've got to be determined and get guidance from the right people. I mean, people's the key to most things, really, but you know, if you get the right people as far as advice can take advice, but take advice from the right people. How do you assess that? You know.
Following on in the same theme then, getting advice from people, when you're looking at doing a business plan, your cash flows, would somebody who's getting a professional and has a professional look to it stand in better stead than somebody that did it themselves?
Not at all. No, as long as it's laid out properly. You know, as long as you know, if they understand how to lay it out, it doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be done by an accountancy firm or anything like that. But it's as long as you've got the bare bones and information, you know, that's set out in the proper way.
And maybe following on the same kind of theme here, in your experience with letting ground, quite often people speak about going for the highest rental win. What is your take on that?
I think everybody's different. I think it comes down to your priorities as far as I'm a believer in a lot in long-term relationships, and I'm there looking for the best price the first year, and then I think if that's going to result in putting that business under pressure to get the highest price or the highest rent, are they going to be able to sustain that, or are you just going to have them for 1 year, then you're on to somebody else? I'm very much a believer in longer term relationships, so I would be wanting to be getting the higher end as far as the rent's concerned, but just the highest price. No, it's about, is he going to leave my fields in a mess? Is he going to be, renting his land for potatoes? Is he going to be lifting his potatoes in December and the field's wrecked? No. I'd rather have somebody paying a wee bit less, and I'm sure they're going to leave the farm in a way that I'm not going to lose money in years to come.
So having a good solid business plan is far more important than how much rent is being offered, basically.
The rent's important. I'm not saying it's not important, but there's other factors that I would personally be taking into consideration.
Okay. For a 15-year, I thought it said 5, for a 15-year tenancy, if somebody's putting in an application, would you be looking for a 5-year cash flow?
Yes.
Okay.
Simple answer. Yeah, well, I mean, it'll depend really on what that enterprise, is it a stable enterprise for 5 years, or is it building up? So I guess you want to take it to the point where, because you can't really 5-year cash flow. How can you see beyond 5 years? You don't know what's happening next year. In some ways, there's a lot of assumptions to get to 5. So to expect any more than that, probably 3 to 5 years. 3 is, depending how much changing there is. If you're going to be making a lot of changes in those 5 years, then fair enough. But if it's going to be the same model from the start, 3 is probably enough.
Okay. Now this one is in a totally different vein, just to change up a little bit. So climate change is very important. It's on the tip of everybody's lips. It's very much looking towards policy being climate change. When people are putting in tenders, should they be talking about their mitigation methods? Is that something that you would like to see?
Yeah, interesting. I guess it's obviously going to be becoming a bigger part of the industry, and I think as producers as such, it's probably, the responsibility is going to come back to the produce that we're selling. So it's the producers that probably need to take action more than the landowners. I mean, I'm not saying it's not the responsibility of landowners, but to be able to market your product, it's the operators that are kind of going to be the ones that are looked at to be saving the planet, not necessarily the owners of the land. So, I think if you've got a specific landlord that has got that, would want to see that, then that's probably relevant. But it wouldn't be top of my priority list. I'd think as a tenant, you would be wanting to look at it commercially and say, well, is this going to benefit my business, or is it going to prejudice my business if I don't do something?
Okay.
So yeah, I think that's what I would be.
Okay. And when you have been involved in a business that has so many different enterprises, and you've dealt with every enterprise going within Scottish agriculture, arguably, which of those would you say to a new entrant, this would be the one to start? Is there one that you would really advise, a mixture of everything, or what would be your advice?
I think it's got to be diversified, really. I mean, we're in egg production. There's going to be a lot of opportunities in egg production, but it's capital intensive. It's a lot of money. So as a new entrant, if you've got a lot of money to go and build a chicken shed, I guess that's a challenge. I would say it's, have a diversified income is important, but yeah, I wouldn't say as far as they've got their various sort of timings as well. The renewables thing, so obviously a lot of opportunities in renewables has been financially, and that's kind of a bit cooler at the moment just because the subsidy system's not really supporting that. So it's very much keeping an eye on those things and seeing what comes along. But yeah, I think it's just building up slowly, but just make sure whatever you're going to do, it's a diversified income stream. Maybe, you know, I've asked the question before. It's sometimes, you know, third party income as far as non-agricultural income, you know, that could be, you know, somebody working, you know, within their part-time somewhere else, you know. So money, I would think that would be something as somebody starting from scratch would be, you know, if you have money coming in from outside the farm to support it as well, kind of thing, because the farm income, that could be a diversified income stream I'm talking about. So yeah, I would say I think I gave you an answer there.
Okay, so yeah, so you're basically looking for not just homing in on one, so not taking on, say, a 200-acre tenancy and just doing sheep or just doing cattle. You're wanting to see a bit of a broad spectrum, different flows of different times of year the cash is coming in, cash flow looking well, and not all the eggs in one basket.
Yeah, well, I think you know, I know it's basically from a timing point of view, you're going to get ups and downs as far as profitability for each separate enterprises. So, I mean, you know, it's going to be difficult potentially to do all kind of cows, cattle, sheep, and crops, but you know, it's basically to de-risk it so that you've got maybe 2 enterprises is enough, really. I would say, you know, but 2 enterprises, and maybe, you know, have you got non-agricultural income somewhere in the system as well, depending on how big the tenancy is.
Okay. When starting out and funds are limited, how would you prioritise your investments or your projects?
Well, I think it's basically where can you access funds from elsewhere to you know, to support that, because there's some areas where you can get finance from elsewhere. You can get HB agreements on equipment. There are deals to be done with as far as livestock are concerned, depending on where you get your livestock done. So you can get access, you can get support from there. So it's really where can you get the support to finance the rest? You know, so it's really plugging the gaps in that and what you want to do and using your finance to do that. Now, I realise that finance is maybe expensive, but you know, you've got to have a business that's got a reasonable amount of investment to kind of get you to the next step. But I think it's very much about, you know, if you're restricted in finance, it's maybe just small steps, you know.
Okay. And talking about finance, like it is often the limiting factor for new entrants. It's usually the hurdle for most people to get started, along with land. So say they get the land part, what would be your kind of advice for where to go to fight for finance? Like you've spoken about having a business plan to go for a tenancy. Would you use that same business plan to go to a bank? Would you speak to the bank before you even apply for the tenancy? What would your advice be there?
Well, certainly applying for the tenancy, you know, you need to be able to assure the landlord that you've got funds in place or you've spoken to. So, you know, the business plan you've prepared for the tenancy should be enough to at least go to the bank and ask them, you know, if they are prepared to support that or support that as a part of it, really. But, you know, before you go for the tenancy, because, you know, it's basically, if the landlord turns around and say, right, you've got the tenancy, and you say, oh, I'll have to go and see if I can get finance, that's not really where you want to be. But you know, as I say, banks are supportive. You know, I said already, you can hire purchase equipment. You maybe need a backer for some of these things as well. You maybe need somebody to sign off, you know, on some of the finance. So again, that's another sort of difficult one. Maybe not everybody knows somebody that is prepared to sign off in their investment to say, look, I'll back this person to be, you know, he'll you know, honor the debt, if you like. So you know, but there are places, and professional I mean, even the professional, like the banks and that as well, they would be able to point you in the right direction, and some of your professional advisors like SRUC.
And I'm very, very conscious of time, and that you are getting a bit of a grilling here. So final question, and it's a Kirsten choice question. It's my question. What is your final take home that you would like people to leave tonight with?
I think the take home would be, we need a lot of new people into agriculture, young people into agriculture. We've got to find a way of getting more young people into agriculture. So as far as getting a tenancy, you know, if you get a tenancy, and look at a job elsewhere as well, because there are a lot of businesses looking for good young people who perhaps could have a tenancy and have a job in agriculture as well, like yourself, Kirsten. So agriculture needs people like you. So you know, just you know, try and not necessarily think that tenancy is going to be, you know, just I'm only going to be a farmer, you know, because I think agriculture needs a lot of young people in it. So if we can try and get more people like yourself, where the industry can get the benefit of you services as well as you get to do what you want to do and be farming as well. I think that's where we'd want to be. So it's just, let's try and get more people into agriculture.
Okay, thank you. And there is a few questions that we've not got to. I'll try and answer to you over the messaging thing. But if there is anything after this, then please, Rebecca, I'll give you the contact details in just a minute. So I'll hand back over to you, Rebecca.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you both for answering those questions. And so just a final close for tonight. So thank you everybody for attending tonight. A recording of this meeting will be posted on the FAST website, so feel free to go and have a listen back to tonight's meeting, or equally any of the previous FAST meetings. And one last thing to conclude tonight's meeting. So you'll be sent an email tomorrow with an evaluation form. So if you could really do your best to try and fill out the form, it just provides us feedback and then helps make these meetings possible. And that would be great. And if anybody has any further questions, then you can email them to me. So it's rebecca.mcbain@sec.ac.uk. That's great. So that concludes tonight's meeting. Thank you, everybody, and good night.